For those of you who are new to Promethean PAC and Promethean Action, you may not be aware of our history, which I believe sheds light on why we play such a crucial role in this ongoing revolution we're all involved in. As you may know, we are the successor organization to LaRouche PAC, which was founded by Lyndon LaRouche, of whom there were probably more lies, misinformation, and pure vitriol spewed out against than any other person in U.S. history, until, of course, Donald Trump. I hope this brief vignette will give you a glimpse into why that is. Lyndon LaRouche was one of the true universal geniuses of history, a polymath who made fundamental contributions in science, historiography, psychology, aesthetics, philosophy, and especially his specialty, economics. He, like Benjamin Franklin, embodied the best of the American intellectual tradition and used his knowledge to help guide our nation back to those roots. But unlike Franklin, he never lived to see the fruits of his life's work. I believe we, his students and collaborators, and everyone working with us in this movement, are seeing that now. LaRouche was unique among his contemporaries, remarkable for his fierce intellectual independence, which manifested itself even as a child, when he would challenge his teachers, demanding of them that they demonstrate the truthfulness of the axioms which they expected him to simply accept, whether in science, mathematics, or religion. And it was this devotion to truth, above all, even at the cost of social ostracization or even persecution, that would characterize his entire life. After World War II, in which he served in the China-Burma India theater, he returned to America caught in the grip of this fear-driven escapism and conformity of the Truman era, otherwise known as McCarthyism. This he refused to submit to, and as a result, forewent the material success he might have had, instead embarking upon a remarkable journey. His love of classical music and poetry, scientific discovery, and history had embedded in him a deep belief that the essence of mankind was its creative nature, its ability to discover fundamental principles of creation, devise new technologies based on them, and to make constant upward progress in the human condition, which no other species is capable of. This central truth of mankind's nature as creative, as being made in the image of the Creator, became the pole star of every effort LaRouche made in economics, statecraft, history, and science. It unlocked the true history of the American system and our nation's founding, contrary to what is taught in the schools, but also the true nature of our nation's and indeed all of mankind's enemy, the British Empire, the modern successor of an oligarchy with an unbroken history of evil attempts to snuff out creativity and freedom, stretching back to the Roman Empire and, before it, the Persian and Babylonian empires. With the help of a growing movement around him, of which many of us in Promethean PAC are included, groundbreaking studies were done in history, intelligence warfare, and modern cultural warfare being waged at the time, known as the drug, rock, sex counterculture. This enabled those young activists in the movement to break free of the cultural brainwashing, which was turning so many of our contemporaries into controlled zombies. And one can certainly see the end result of that in the crazed and suicidal behavior of today's liberals. Even though the means for defeating the oligarchy didn't exist at the time, either politically or culturally, LaRouche and his growing movement continued to make creative and visionary proposals for a new renaissance for America and the world. These proposals were embodied in the 8 presidential campaigns which LaRouche waged, dozens of nationally televised presentations, and literally millions of pamphlets and other literature distributed on the streets of America over decades. LaRouche, like a great military commander, knew that if you didn't have the raw physical power to defeat an enemy, you must outflank them, and that a flank isn't just a physical maneuver, but a creative mental act, an outwitting of one's opponent. Perhaps the greatest flank that LaRouche proposed and almost succeeded in carrying out was the Strategic Defense Initiative, which Ronald Reagan adopted and became commonly known as Star Wars. This, had it not been sabotaged by Henry Kissinger and George H.W. Bush, would have completely overturned the British Empire's control of world geopolitics through their doctrine of mutually assured destruction, or MAD. But as a result of his crime of hubris in challenging the power of the oligarchy, LaRouche was subjected to the most massive campaign of vilification, financial warfare, and legal persecution in U.S. history. That is, of course, until Donald Trump. But in LaRouche's case, he was ultimately unjustly convicted and sent to prison for 5 years, refusing to make a plea deal which would have compromised his principles. From that prison, he wrote a document entitled In the Garden of Gethsemane, in which he described the spiritual quality that any true leader must have in order to make a positive contribution to mankind's benefit, as being the willingness to ultimately give one's life, if necessary, for others and for the sake of one's own immortal identity, one's soul. Although LaRouche's organization was almost crushed and many of its supporters, both in the government and in the general population, were cowering in fear, this quality of leadership continued to inspire not only his followers, but many others, including artists, political leaders, and scientists throughout the world who joined the fight for his exoneration and freedom. But for the moment at least, the oligarchs were free to resume their takeover and destruction of our republic. The presidencies of Bush, Clinton, Bush, and Obama were a disaster of wars, economic destruction, and cultural decay unprecedented in our history. There is no telling what accomplishments our country and the world might have made had this and other of LaRouche's policy proposals, such as rapid development of fusion energy, global industrial and agricultural development, the elimination of the drug trade, and colonization of the moon and Mars, been carried out. But alas, our country has suffered 50 years of industrial decline, loss of productive identity, cultural degeneration, and the resulting tragedy of drug deaths, violent crime, perverse sexuality, and other diseases of despair. After being released from prison, LaRouche continued to organize for a better future, even running for president 3 more times, never faltering in his belief that Americans were capable of greatness when called upon, and that the conditions would someday emerge for a revival of that spirit. And those of us who stuck with him, like apostles of a better humanity, are the bearers of that creative spark and the joy in imparting it that is the essence of LaRouche's spirit. And perhaps just as importantly, we're hardened and battle-tested warriors who know what it takes to defeat the enemy, completely and permanently. I believe the conditions for that, and as President Trump says, a golden age for America and the world, have now arrived. Like other great world souls, LaRouche's reverberates through the ages and continues to illuminate other minds and souls in ways which, although seemingly mysterious, are really quite lawful and should serve to strengthen our faith in the goodness of God's creation and the sacredness of the cause that our American Republic represents. Thank you.